If you want to build a better marriage, try my new app to help you have a fun, connected, on fire relationship.
He's always present. He's always doing the hard things. He's a very gentle man, actually. He doesn't yell. He's not like mean. I think he cares. He's not a lazy man. He's always like busy with something.
Your husband sucks. It sounds like he doesn't do anything else. He sounds like a guy that doesn't really care what you think or feel. He does not do a good job of telling you that he loves you. Brought to you by Together, my daily marriage app. Your husband sucks.
Well, can't sell a marriage app without first creating marriage problems, right? The first time I broke down a John Delony video a few months ago, I had no idea that it would strike such a chord with viewers. Many of you saying that it's about time someone called him out. In fact, it's one of my most watched videos and has over 650 comments. And since publishing it, doing another Delony breakdown has been by far the most requested topic from all of you. So that's what we're doing today. Breaking down another John Delony advice call and what it says about his perceptions of men. And thanks to Scratch57 for suggesting this recent Delony call in particular. For those of you who are not familiar with John Delony, he's part of the Dave Ramsey network that includes Christian, personal finance and services, and a larger self-help media ecosystem, if you will, that's built around Christian values, around freedom from debt, discipline, family stability, and practical life advice. Although Delony is not a clinical psychologist or a licensed therapist, he sits inside the Ramsey network as its mental health and relationship personality, giving caller-based advice on everything from sexual infidelity to marriage and parenting advice. Some of his calls have to do with trauma and even more everyday emotional wellness. Think of Delony as the Jerry Springer of Christian call-in radio discussions. He apparently has 2 PhDs, one in counselor education and supervision, and one in higher education administration, in addition to apparently having some crisis response experience. And as I mentioned, today we'll look at how Delony handles one particular female caller and closely examine how he responds to her request for help. I will show some clips of the call as we go, but I'm not going to go through that call chronologically because I think it makes more sense to examine it by topic. So feel free to skip around in this video's chapters if you like. So here's the topic of the call. A woman calls John because she's worried that her 10-year-old son is not social and really doesn't have any friends. She says that her husband doesn't do anything with or for the son and wishes that her husband would do more with the kid. She describes the son as bright, kind, emotionally sensitive, and desperate for the father's approval, while portraying her husband as physically present, but emotionally distant, overcritical, and uncomfortable with normal boyish behaviors. According to the woman, most of the interaction from the father is low conflict correction, observable disapproval of the son, and a lack of mentoring or bonding. Delony explains this issue as damaging for the boy, and he argues that the son may be internalizing the father's distance as a lifelong question of what's wrong with him. To which the woman responds that she has tried to get her husband more involved by telling him about parenting concepts. I think science was mentioned in there at some point, and using Gottman relationship language, along with suggesting for the husband several books for him to read. But she then says he shuts down, leading her then to seek Delony's advice about how to get the husband to be more emotionally available. So that's the context. One of the first things that struck me early on in this call, even after watching it several times and editing, going through it many different ways, I still haven't been able to 100% confirm whether the dad is the biological father or stepfather. The woman's statement right at the beginning is, "We are a family of 4 and my son is 10 and he has a younger sister." Now that's not how I would expect married mothers to naturally phrase 2 shared biological children and how she describes them. Throughout the conversation, she continues to repeat phrases like "my son" rather than "we have 2 kids" or "our son has a younger sister." To me, her use of "my son" and "he has a sister" sounds more like a blended family structure. For example, maybe if the daughter was shared with the husband and the boy was from a prior relationship or marriage. But she never does make it definitive. And Delony never asks. Now, there are a couple of statements from Delony like, half of him, referring to the son, half of him is his father. But even there, that's John's wording, not hers. And because the woman focused on her husband's alleged problem, she may not correct Delony if he and his viewers' perceptions of the man as a biological father work in her favor. But why would Delony not get that conversation? For an issue like this, I would expect that within the first minute, a therapist or counselor would ask something like, is he your son's biological father? Is he a stepfather? Is the kid adopted? Or has your husband raised this child since early childhood? Because that changes the entire situation and the expectations of the father-son relationship. If he is the biological father, the child may experience the rejection as, my own father doesn't like me. But if he's a stepfather, the child may experience it more as, this man does not accept me, or I'm only tolerated by my mom's new husband. And what would a therapist want to know about dad? A quality and unbiased therapist would likely want to understand the dad as a whole, right? Not just the emotional withholding that the woman selectively describes. And we'll get into this selection comments of hers here in just a moment as well. But a quality, unbiased therapist would likely want to know about his developmental history. What was his own father and his own family like? They'd want to know his emotional baseline, things like his depression, any emotional shutdown, the reasons for those. They'd want to know his attachment styles. For example, does he avoid closeness because it feels demanding, awkward, or simply invasive? And then also, what about his beliefs about discipline? For example, does he think that boys need obedience and less coddling? And I think this is a big one. The relationship with the mother. The therapist would probably want to know whether the man's emotional distance is partly displaced marital resentment. Maybe the woman is the problem. But Delony does not even consider that possibility. There's much more that I could go into about what a good therapist would want to actually know, but Delony totally ignores all of it. You get the idea. Now, it is important for me to note that the woman does say many nice things about her husband. For example, these that I included in the opening clip montage.
He's always present. He's always doing the hard things. He's a very gentle man, actually. He doesn't yell. He's not, mean. I think he cares. He's not a lazy man. He's always, busy with something.
But despite her positive comments, throughout the entire 18-minute call, Delony continues to interrupt the woman, often to assert his own negative comments about the husband or to disregard and correct her own beliefs. Now, this is actually something that I've noticed a lot with Delony. If you watch any of his videos, pay attention to how many times he interrupts the conversation. I counted about 8 times in this video, including these.
And
I
so,
would say, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I guess
This is the work. This is the hard thing that we're supposed to do.
Well,
exactly.
hold on.
Yeah. Well, because they don't have a foundation of
that's how
I don't want to say trust.
No,
yeah.
but that's how you build the foundation. You go.
The interruptions push this conversation to where Delony wants it to go, and it prevents her, the woman, from accurately discussing what's important to her, especially when she tries to describe her husband as active, gentle, and caring. In a counseling process, those interruptions and corrections reinforce what Delony wants his callers and his viewers to believe, and it's absolutely sickening to me, because it reduces the chance of really understanding the husband before turning him into the problem. Now, I counted at least 12 instances of the woman getting validation from Delony, which I think is exactly why so many women watch his content. It's absolute pandering to women. Many times it's John telling her what she wants to hear, whether she's asking or seeking it or not. Here's just a few examples of that.
You're right about all the responsibilities, all the things boys need from their dads. You're right. Straight A's can be a trauma response too.
Yeah.
Your son is the job.
Yeah, I've said those exact same of this is the work.
I got to tell you, man, that breaks my heart.
We can't shame him into breaking a habit.
You can't get results out of relationship without coercion or demand, because that guy loves me.
Right. Yeah.
All of this validation in rapid succession is extremely unprofessional, because Delony repeatedly confirms and strengthens the woman's one-sided beliefs rather than getting to the core of the issue. Once he validates for her that the husband is emotionally damaging, avoidant, and possibly dismissive, she gets reassured that her core beliefs are correct, which can increase resentment rather than creating space for an honest assessment. But here's one of the most disgusting parts of the entire conversation.
Because he's not a yeller. He's not violent in any way. He's just, he's very gentle man, actually. He's just very good at disapproving in a low volume, basically. And
can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I in no way is what's happening in your home worse than if he was abusive. Okay, I don't want you to hear me say that. But if he was abusive, there will come a moment when your son will go, "Oh, he was the problem." The fact that he's quiet and seemingly doing all of the right things will further dig your son inside himself to mine for, oh, it for sure is me.
Did you catch that? That's the abuser plant. She's saying nice things about her husband. John interrupts her, cuts her off, and he says that he's not calling the husband abusive, but simply saying the word. He's introducing abuse into the conversation. And then he continues to say what damage that's going to do to the son, although all she was doing, the woman, was saying nice things about him. John plants an abuse-adjacent description of the husband's behaviors. Now, in a counseling or advice context, that kind of ignorance is extremely dangerous because it can change what she thinks about her husband as potentially violent and makes him seem dangerous or morally bankrupt. All John has to do is make a comparative statement using the word abuse. And now it's in her head, and she'll think about it every time she thinks about this issue. Now let's talk about Delony's leading questions and statements. I counted about 12 of these instances throughout the call. Here's just a few of them.
I don't normally say this, but your husband sucks.
Oh, no, he doesn't.
All right, so with that leading statement, this is the clearest early example. And he says it less than 2 minutes into this call. I think it's like a minute 40 seconds into it. Before even asking basic clarifying questions, so far at this point, the call is only the woman introducing what she's calling for. And that's John's first statement to her. So before asking any basic qualifying questions about the family structure or whether the man is a biological or stepfather, that statement tells the woman what to think about her husband for the entire duration of the call.
And by the way, he'll chase this question for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
What was so bad about me?
Yeah.
All right. So throughout the conversation, again, we're talking about Delony leading the conversation. Throughout the entire call, Delony assumes the son's experience and thoughts. What's so bad about me? Now, this may be psychologically plausible, but it's still John's interpretation without even knowing the kid or exploring other interpretations. He is saying what the kid is thinking.
Extraordinary psychologist who, his famous line to me that really resonated and stuck with me forever, he looked at me once after we were working with some traumatized kids and he said, "Hey, straight A's can be a trauma response too."
Yeah.
Right? Some kids will sing and dance and do whatever they have to do.
All right, now this one is powerful rhetoric that pushes the woman toward believing that her husband is causing trauma, even if the kid is not expressing negative outcomes. In fact, other than not being social, I don't think this woman actually listed any negative outcomes that the kid is experiencing. She describes the kid as her son as academically advanced, eager to please, but none of that matters to John. He's going to lead this discussion where he wants it to go.
Well,
Exactly.
no, hold on.
Yeah.
I guarantee this, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm almost positive I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
He does the same thing to you.
Does he do the same? I think my husband is really in a rut, to be fair. I mean, he's present. He's always present. He's always doing the hard things. He's just not doing them happily.
Oh, man, and this one is a doozy. Now, in addition to the introducing abuse into a conversation that absolutely did not belong there, I think this one is right up there as far as how important it is. Delony did not ask whether the husband treats her similarly. She did not bring it up on her own. Delony asserts it with a guarantee. And as a result, it expands the husband's alleged failure in fatherhood to failure in marriage. Absolutely disgusting. Oh, and did you also notice there another interruption by him to make that point?
I know, but listen, if he does all the right things, but he's doing them to avoid being with y'all, those aren't the right things.
Yeah.
I'll get the grocery.
Oh man! Now here, in this instance, he's asserting that the husband's family tasks, things that he's taking care of the household, running errands, things like that, that those are of avoidance or could be avoidance. Now she says that her husband is not lazy, but Delony turns that around by suggesting that his being busy may be him avoiding the family. The damn husband, father, can't win if he does or if he doesn't. John's just going to put him in whatever box he wants the guy to be in. Okay, there are others, but again, for the sake of time and my own sanity, I'll move on. Now let's talk about the obvious issue in that we're hearing only her side of the story. What we're getting is selection bias, right? She's choosing which examples and stories to tell. We're getting attribution bias. That's her interpreting her husband's behaviors through her own belief system. There's also the identified patient problem. In family therapy, one person is often the identified problem, which is exactly what's happening throughout this entire call. I think a major thing here, John doesn't even bring this up, well, maybe barely at all, maternal gatekeeping. I think this is a huge one. The woman says that she has, and I'm quoting, talked to him about coddling versus attending, along with relationship advice from the Gottmans, science, books and authors that the husband can read. She's given all of that information to the dad. She even admits that she may over-communicate it with her husband. In short, she seems to me like an overbearing woman who won't stop nagging her husband. And another thing we get from a one-sided story, the son is described entirely as positive terms, as I mentioned a moment ago. Amazing, academically advanced, kind, sweet, fantastic big brother, she says. Emotionally struggling, and eager for dad's love. Now listen, the truth is that kid he could be an absolutely entitled little prick that's impossible to deal with. He may have tried to burn down his school with all of the neighborhood dogs inside of it. We simply don't know, thanks to Delony never bringing it up. Another thing from the one-sided story is that the husband's internal experiences are missing, obviously, right? And because we're only hearing her side of the story, we don't know whether the husband feels rejected by his wife, emotionally overwhelmed by the son, the mother, the daughter, or all three. We don't know if he's resentful of being constantly corrected. Maybe he's depressed and burned out from work. We just have absolutely no idea, and neither does John. And keep in mind, we never got confirmation, and I'm not entirely convinced that this is a biological father. He very well may have, and I think there's evidence that he stepped into a marriage and fatherhood at some point. How long ago? I don't know. But this woman may be asking the public to judge her husband as if he's a failed biological father, while not disclosing that her husband, again, may in fact have entered the child's life later and is thereby operating inside a blended family with unclear authority and role expectations. The issue is whether she, by omission, allowed the audience and Delony to assume the most emotionally loaded version of that family dynamic. Now, my intuition is that it's very possible, even likely, that she's intentionally managing the story to serve her own agenda. But what did John Delony's viewers have to say? After 3 days and nearly 70,000 views, Delony's video showed just over 1,000 comments and replies. Taking a sample of just the first 352 comments that YouTube put on screen for me, I didn't filter or sort them in any way, about 60 to 65% of the comments appear to have come from women. And of those 352, here's how the top 5 topics break down. About 31%, the husband and father is emotionally neglectful. Comments about him being abusive, again, right? Because John introduced that. He's also selfish. He sucks, just like John said. So the comments are directly condemning the dad's behavior, often repeating, as I mentioned, exactly what Delony had said in the call. About 26%, roughly a quarter of them, describe the mother as enabling, defending, excusing, or failing to protect the son. A large number focused less on the dad and more on her denial, laughing, justifying, or just not listening. A similar amount, about 25%, roughly one quarter of the comments, included something about the son suffering long-term emotional damage that's tied to personal testimony. Their commenters' personal testimony, that is. Many of them describe their own father's estrangement, struggling with their own self-worth, hurting as adults, and having no contact. About 10%, maybe 11, 10, 12% of the comments were along the lines of that the woman needs to take action, whether it's therapy, divorce, ultimatums, big brothers or big sisters. All of these are suggestions for the woman to steps for her to take to resolve the issue. A small percentage, maybe about 7 or 8%, something like that, were broader reactions to Delony in his show. Different mentions of parenting, gender roles, things like John is right, I love John's channel, that kind of nonsense. Let's move on and talk a little bit about the problem with a Christian YouTube radio host like John. I think a major problem here is that as a Christian advice person, Delony is extremely arrogant, narcissistic, and expressing multiple layers of irresponsibility. He's publicly shaping what a wife thinks about her husband, how viewers understand men, and how family conflict gets framed around morality and feminism, to be quite honest. And this entire call should make Christians pissed off. But as we saw from the comments, his faith-based female audience eats it up. They love this stuff, even cheering Delony on while he continues to destroy one marriage, one relationship, one child, one husband at a time. It's absolutely repulsive to me what Delony does to families and men. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I left the Christian church more than 20 years ago, and it's for reasons exactly like this. I had a similar experience with an almost identical response from the church and its elders, and that's why I'll never go back. Because of Christians like Delony. Call me crazy, but I believe that Christian counsel should be especially cautious about partial testimony, false witness, and the temptation to validate one spouse by persecuting and prosecuting the other one. Even if the husband is failing badly, his experience is still extremely important. Even outside of the Christian aspects of Delony's biblical nonsense, the issue still lacks ethics. Any responsible counselor or therapist, regardless of their spiritual beliefs and approach, would usually slow down and ask, as I mentioned earlier, clarifying questions before escalating to moral judgments or victim blaming. Where Delony's misguidance defies Christianity is his quick and repeated public condemnation of the husband without ever having spoken to him. Saying, "Your husband sucks," may be emotionally satisfying, and it may work very well for his female audience, but it is not consistent with Christian teachings like restraint, charity, patience, or not even judging someone without knowing them. That's what I would expect a Christian counselor or therapist to be doing. I mean, seriously, John, what the hell? You Christians out there, tell me if I'm wrong. But I would think that a Christian approach would include truth and humility, at least a little bit of it. The father is not on the call. He cannot respond or clarify, can't even defend himself. A caring Christian counselor, pastor, or therapist would be very careful about turning a wife's one-sided story into a public moral execution to be mocked by thousands of women online. Listen, I actually had a lot more written down in my notes that I wanted to cover and discuss in this video, but I ended up deleting a lot of it because it made me so angry more and more as I continued. I'll put up my previous Delony breakdown right here for those of you that haven't seen it, and if you've got the stomach for more of his hatred for men. Thanks as always for sticking around to the end, and I can't wait to see your comments again. Cheers, be careful out there, and I'll be back soon.